Good morning, fifth graders. Today we are going to be moving on to part 2 of our field trip project, and we're going to be creating a display of your data that you collected yesterday. So you're going to create a column graph below to compare the costs of each category, food, entry, and transportation of the 2 different field trips you designed. But first, let's look at what a bar graph is again in review. So a bar graph is a visual tool that uses bars to compare among categories. A bar graph may run horizontally or vertically. The important thing to know is that the longer the bar, the greater the value. A bar graph makes it easy to compare sets of data between different groups at a glance. The graph represents categories on one axis as a discrete value or independent variable. And the goal is to show the relationship between the x and the y axis. So we have our independent variable and our dependent variable. The bar charts can also show big changes over time. So like in this one, we have our x-axis, which has our years, and our y-axis, which has our data. So this is very simple because we don't even know what any of this represents yet because it's missing some key elements. We are missing our title for our x-axis and our title for our y-axis, and we're missing the key that tells us which each color bar represents. So those are all very important elements to help us read a bar graph. So let's scroll down and let's look at a little different one. So this one tells us that this is in millions of dollars, and this is our years, and we know that this is quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, and quarter 4. So this is most likely related to some sort of business because most businesses look at their year in quarters, and so their quarterly earnings. Or actually this one is for quarterly sales. So you can see the different and compare the different quarters. So the best quarter that they've had is in 2012 in the 3rd quarter. So these are a couple different types of bar graphs. We have our vertical bar graph. Then we have our stacked bar graph, which is a little bit harder to read. So we are going to be working today with creating a vertical bar graph versus a horizontal bar graph. Or in your document, it's called a column graph. So today we are going to be working on creating our column graphs to compare the elements of our field trip. So you're going to need to open your field trip slideshow from yesterday. So you're going to have your project 1 open because you're going to need this last page and make sure it's all filled in. If you haven't done this yet, you need to do this first. So yesterday I created my list of all my students going on the field trip and all my adults going on the field trip. So I counted them up. I had 20 kids and 5 adults going. So now I need to calculate my costs. So I chose Jupiter and Earth as my 2 options. Then I went through and calculated my costs for each element of my field trip. So I have my food, my transportation, and I have my food, entry, and transportation for Earth, and my grand total. So if you read today, we are going to be comparing our food totals, our entry totals, and our transportation totals. So we are going to need this last column here of this graph for each of the trips. So if you remember from our last project, what we need to do is we need to insert chart. Now, and we're going to choose a column chart. Then to edit our column chart, we go to open source. So in our open source, we are going to now figure out where each goes. So we need 1, 2, we need a third period because we need our food, we need our entry, and we need our transportation. And that doesn't just pop up. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to go in and edit our chart. So we have our legend, but that's not what one we want to be in. We want to be in series. Oh, here we go. We want to be in setup. So once you double click, instead of customize, you want to go to setup. So we need to add a series. And we are going to select so we need numbers. Okay, now we have our series. So let's review. What I did was I had to enter in my data, and then I double clicked here. I went over to setup. I went to add a series. Then I highlighted my column and I clicked OK. So now I have my 3 series at the top of my chart. But we only need 2 series at the bottom because we need our 2 field trips that we're comparing. So we're going to compare Jupiter to Earth. So now I have my series all typed in. Now I need to go back and I need to get my data. So I cost 165. So I'm just going to copy and paste my information in since I have it here. Oops, wrong document. So now you can see that our data fixed our x-axis or our y-axis, so that way it's now in dollars. And you can see that since Earth is still our weird numbers, that it's having a difficult time comparing them. So now I need to get my Earth numbers in there. So I take my food and I'm going to copy and paste. And I take my entry, copy, paste. Now I wrote free here, which I know is 0, but when I type it in over here, I'm not going to be able to write free. I'm going to have to put in my 0 to show that there is no cost for transportation in Earth. So there's not going to be a bar there because it is 0. So now remember, you can customize all the different parts, and you need to customize the different parts of your chart. So you need to change your chart title. You need to do the chart horizontal axis, and you need to title the vertical axis. And remember, you can change the fonts, the colors, all of that once you add in your titles. You can change your series. You can change the color of your legends. And your horizontal axis, change the colors. Your vertical axis, so like this one, I would for sure change that so I could see my numbers better. I can change the color of my grid lines. So I can customize all of these. So like if I want to customize the food color, if I want to change the color, I can change the color. If I want to customize the entry, I can change the color. If I want to change transportation, I can change it. So I can change it so that it matches whatever color scheme I want to have in my graph. So the chart title, we need to make sure that we keep it. Change that one for sure. You can center it. You can bold it. You can change your color of it. You can do whatever you want. So once you have your chart looking the way you want it to, and it's showing the information you need it to, remember you have to go back over here and update so that your chart is updated in your classroom assignment. And that is your assignment for today, is to create this chart and make sure it has all the elements that a bar graph needs. So it needs a title, it needs the X or the X-axis title, the Y-axis title, it needs all the correct data, it needs a key, and it needs to stand out and show your data so we can use it to compare.